This session is for you if you are interested in finding out more about teaching as a career. We're specifically talking about getting into teaching at a postgraduate level, assuming you already have a first degree. This applies to both primary and secondary teaching. So we're going to look at applying for postgraduate teacher training, non-UK citizens who want to teach in the UK, bursaries and scholarships, the different options for initial teacher training, and finally, advising you to do your research with links to various online resources. In order to teach, what would you need? Well, there is not one clear, straight pathway. The information here relates to schools in England only. Other areas of the UK may be slightly different. There are also different types of schools. You need QTS to teach in some, but not necessarily all. This applies to both primary and secondary level. The one element common to all these routes is a higher education degree. Where you go and what you do in terms of your initial teacher training after this will be your decision. QTS, or Qualified Teacher Status, is a legal requirement to teach in many English schools and is considered desirable for teachers in the majority of schools in England. Therefore, gaining QTS will keep the most options open to you. Relevant experience is considered desirable by most employers. For some options, it is a requirement. And again, it'll keep the most options open if you gain relevant work experience. The application window in any year is open from October through to the following mid-September. And you can apply for up to 4 different options. For most of them, you will apply via this website here, using one personal statement for 4 options. So we're going to look at the different options shortly, but before we do, you should ensure that you are familiar with the following. The Get Into Teaching service. There are the usual sources of graduate careers information, so websites such as Prospects or UCAS. However, somewhere along your teaching journey, you will be referred here to this website, Get Into Teaching service, which provides information, support, and eventually access to the application process. As it says when you first access the website, start your teaching journey today. If you are interested in teaching as a career, we strongly suggest that you register with them as it provides access to information, advice and guidance. You would be allocated your own advisor and invitations to relevant information events. Everything you need to know to start a career in teaching will be sent straight to your inbox. Be tailored to your own situation. You'll get all the latest information as well as advice and support. Whatever stage you're at in the process, it's not too early. They provide this service for students at any stage. So whether you're simply wanting answers to a question, a brief inquiry, or you want support completing the applications, then we suggest that you register with the Get Into Teaching service. For non-UK citizens, if you are a qualified teacher from outside the UK, you can work as a teacher in England for up to 4 years without QTS. But as we've previously said, you will need QTS to teach in most schools in England. Follow the links on the Get Into Teaching website for non-UK citizens and sign up to make contact with an advisor to get the most accurate and up-to-date support and information. And you may find it useful to gain relevant UK work experience. Bursaries and scholarships. So if you want to undertake postgraduate teacher training in England, you may be eligible for either a bursary or scholarship. You would not be able to get both, and they are not available for the salaried training options. Bursaries and scholarships are tax-free and there is no need to repay them. So a postgraduate bursary, as we say, are tax-free payments you receive if you're training to teach certain subjects. You don't need to apply. They are automatic and based on the subjects that you want to teach. Scholarships are awarded by specific organisations. So, for example, the Royal Society of Chemistry, Institute of Physics, or the British Council in the case of teaching modern foreign languages, and related to the specific subjects of those organisations. Non-UK citizens may be eligible for a bursary or a scholarship to train to teach either physics or languages. For further details on any of this information, see the bursary and scholarship section on the Get Into Teaching website. So, the different options for initial teacher training. There are a number of different routes, and as I said at the beginning, ensure you do your research. Consider, where would you like to be based? Are you paid a salary or do you have to pay the fees? Explore the pros and cons of each of these different options before making your applications. So firstly, PGCE with QTS. This is probably the most common route. It's higher education, university based, full-time for a full school year, or there could be part-time options. Consists of a mix of campus learning and placements, and tuition fees are payable. So therefore, you can apply for student finance to support that. Prior classroom experience is preferred. Next, school direct with tuition fees. So the next three options are all school-led training routes. So firstly, school direct with tuition fees is a one-year full-time training programme based in a school and leads to QTS. Consists of work-based training and teaching by a university or college, and usually includes studying for a PGCE where the fees would be payable, and therefore you would be eligible for student finance as it's non-salaried. On the other hand, there's a school direct option with a salary. This is aimed at their description, high quality graduates, typically with at least 3 years transferable work history. It's employment based, so it's full-time, and it will lead to qualified teacher status. But it doesn't necessarily include studying towards a PGCE. But if that was the case, then the fees would be paid. It's applicable to both primary and secondary routes and carries a salary. Teach First is aimed at, again, their words, high achieving graduates in relevant subjects. It's employment based, full-time, in combination with 2 years, both on and off the job, fully funded training. So you would be employed by individual schools, and it leads to a postgraduate diploma in education with QTS. Previous experience is not necessary. It's salaried and very competitive. And finally, there is the option of a postgraduate teaching apprenticeship. So again, employment-based in combination with on and off the job, fully funded training. You're employed by individual schools, and it does lead to QTS. Previous experience is preferred, so as a teaching assistant, for example, and again, it's competitive. So those are the different options for postgraduate initial teacher training. However, in order to make your decision, make sure you do your research, find out as much as you can about the job role and the different ways to become a teacher. What are the different qualifications, the options, the costs? Use available resources. So here there are a number of different links to different websites, particularly the Prospect Careers website, UCAS, the Get Into Teaching website, and don't forget there's the University Careers resource, Student Hub online, or come along and speak to career staff. This is a page from the Student Hub website, and you will find all the information about teaching jobs in the section there on job search, graduate jobs. If you want to make an appointment to speak to one of us, then the menu across the top where it says appointments and follow the steps. Alternatively, we offer drop-in sessions on Monday, Wednesday and Friday afternoons between 1 and 5. Thank you very much for listening.